All right, hello everyone. My name is Kevin and I'm here with Barbara. Together we'd both like to welcome you all to our latest Novedge webinar series episode. For this week's webinar, we're teaming with designer Evan Troxel to explore all that FormZ has to offer for conceptual architectural modeling. There are specific features included in FormZ 7 that makes it a smart and reliable solution for architectural design. From parametric tools for creating walls and stairs, FormZ is more than capable of manipulating solids, surfaces, along with Booleans and NURBS. All this, in addition to 2D drawing layout abilities and several 3D rendering types, make FormZ a production powerhouse. For those of you who don't know who Evan Troxel is, Evan Troxel is a designer specializing in public works projects that include K-12 schools, community college, and university projects, as well as civic and other institutional projects in development at HMC Architects in Southern California. He is also the founder of Method Digital Training and one-third of the team behind the Archispeak podcast. Today's presentation is about 40 minutes long, and afterwards we'll have a brief Q&A where Evan will answer your questions live. Submit yours to us at any time into the chat window below. But before we get going with today's presentation, here's an overview of what we do at Novedge. The Novedge webinar series is brought to you by Novedge.com. As one of the largest online design software stores, we offer a huge assortment of software solutions that cater to virtually every designer's need. To pick up a copy of Autodesk's FormZ 7, you are welcome to call and speak with our specialist, Bob Thayer. You can reach him by his email address, bob@novedge.com. And to learn more about what Evan Troxel has to offer, head on over to his website, getmethod.com. Method is the only website that focuses on making architectural designers worth more by teaching smart digital tools combined with smart workflows. Through video tutorials and time-saving products, you'll learn without a speed limit. In fact, you'll be a rock star to your company, colleagues, and clients. Armed with knowledge, you'll realize your creative designs and make more money doing it. Take your workflow to new heights. Check out Evan Troxel's website for more details at getmethod.com. Barbara?
Hi, everybody. I'm here to strongly encourage everyone to visit the Novedge blog to get a glimpse of who is changing the world of design one step at a time. Meet the innovators, the makers, the architects, the VFX artists who work right on the edge of creativity and technology. Great interviews, great images, and great stories. Come visit us today at blog.novedge.com. And to catch up with the latest product promos and Novedge webinars, like us on Facebook, another source of endless information and, why not, entertainment. Next week, are you using the latest release of AutoCAD? Don't miss your chance to join Autodesk technical evangelist and Catalyst columnist Lynn Allen as she takes you through a tour of the newest productivity features. Knowing Lynn, she's sure to throw in some tips and tricks you can use regardless of the AutoCAD release you are using. This upcoming webinar with Lynn Allen is free and will last about 1 hour, including the Q&A session. To sign up, head over on to www.novedge.com/webinar/110. Last but not least, today's webinar is being recorded live, and if you want to rewatch this episode, as always, you can find it on our Novedge webinar series channel through Vimeo and YouTube. So I'm ready to give the microphone to Evan. Evan, are you?
I'm here.
Great.
All right. Let's see. Are we? Here we go.
Transitioning here. Yeah, so if you guys have questions, submit them. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. Let me know if anything is going wrong in the background. Hopefully not. Enjoy it, guys.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for showing up. My name's Evan Troxel, and you heard the intro there. And just to clarify, also, I don't work for the company that makes FormZ. I just really like using it, and I think it's probably one of the best tools out there for creating architecture on the computer in 3D. And I'll show you kind of the reasons why I like it so much as I take you through building a model like this. And so I'm just going to start from scratch, and I'm going to try to pace myself here so that it doesn't go too fast. Just to give you a little bit of background, I've been using FormZ since 1994 when I was in college in the architecture department at Cal Poly. And FormZ was a much younger product now, and it's matured a lot since then, and it's still is just as powerful, if not more. Well, I'll say it's a lot more powerful now than it was then, but a lot of the fundamentals behind FormZ haven't changed in all that time. And it's something that I really like about products is that they evolve and adapt slowly over time without changing too much, just to be the latest, greatest thing. I appreciate that about this tool. So in the latest version, FormZ version 7, there's been a lot of improvements, especially for architecture, and that's what I mainly use it for, although I would not classify it as an architectural modeler per se, even though it has a lot of architectural friendly tools. It really is a general purpose modeling program, but it does have a lot of cool stuff specific for architects. So while it's not a building information modeling program, it's my favorite tool for doing conceptual design before I take my ideas and input them into Revit or ArchiCAD or whatever we end up using for the job to actually document the project. I use this up front to get ideas out quickly, iterate on those designs, and then possibly, most likely, render them and present them to the client. So what I'm going to do here is I'm kind of showing you the end product of what I'm going to build, and then I'm going to go back and kind of retrace the steps because, you know, we have a limited amount of time here, so I wanted to come up with something. And this is a model that I recently built, and I'm using a 3D connection mouse. I really also enjoy using those, so a little plug for those guys. They make a pretty cool tool. And so you'll notice that I don't use the mouse with the orbit and the pan tool too much, which is you know, standard navigation tools. I use the 3D navigation mouse because it just makes it where I can have both hands kind of driving the scene. And so, you know, maybe that's another thing for another time. But if you're wondering why my mouse is doing one thing and the model's spinning, that's why. So, like I said, I have a limited amount of time. So this model here is something that I work on quite a bit is classroom and school design. And so this, just to give you an idea of where we're going, this is kind of a 4-classroom cluster with a shared space in the middle that has its own entry, and there's a couple of little pull-out spaces or offices, and then maybe some storage rooms. So you can see here this is like a science classroom with islands, and we've got some desks, we've got some people. And so this scene is, you know, it's a pretty simple model, but there's a lot of little details in here too. And so we're going to get into making a lot of these different parts. All right, so what I'm going to do is I have a underlay kind of prepared here that I'll use to snap to. And I don't always start with an underlay, but just to kind of give you an idea, you know, I get a lot of people on my website asking, show me how to start from scratch. How do you bring in, because a lot of people draw in AutoCAD or they draw in Illustrator, or maybe they sketch something in. And any one of those ways to start is fine. There is no one way to do it. In this case, just to kind of speed things up, since I had a plan, I brought it in. And so it's one of the things I really like about FormZ is when you import, there's lots of different file formats to choose from. One of the great things about this program is that it talks to everybody. So you can see here, you know, we've got, we can import Artlantis files, we can import DWGs, DXFs, IGES. It'll just straight up open SketchUp files. You can open up Rhino files, 3DM files, OBJ. So there's a lot of file formats. And so this one happened to be a DWG, and I just brought that in as an underlay. And one of the things that this is, in particular, as an underlay, is this is a reference file. So the cool thing about reference files is you can change them out very easily, and you can see it acts as a single piece. So what I see a lot of people do is they'll bring in underlays, and then they want to imprint those onto a polygon and start push-pulling. And a lot of times that leads to bad geometry. And one thing FormZ is really good at is not making bad geometry. I'm also a SketchUp user. I use a lot of different tools, and I talk about that on my method website. But FormZ makes super clean geometry, and one of the things that's really important about that as we kind of move into the future of fabrication is when you send stuff to CNC files and when you send stuff to 3D printers, that geometry has to be really clean and really perfect for those files not to have any problems when you want to get output. So that's another reason why I like it. So what I like to do is I like to bring in an underlay, and then I just simply snap to it when I'm creating my model from it. And that usually leads to cleaner geometry. So at the end, you can just discard the underlay and have the model sitting on top of it. And you never have to worry about getting some bad intersection or something like that that you know, happens quite a bit when we're working with SketchUp or if we actually started to push-pull geometry that came from another program. So what I'm going to do here is jump right into this. And so here's the main toolbar in FormZ. If I just simply tear any of these off, you can see that there's quite a bit of tools in here that are kind of architect-specific. So here we got stairs, we have terrain models, we have roofs. We have kind of the standard geometry manipulation stuff like reshape, which is like push-pull. We can offset, we can imprint. We also have deformations. FormZ offers a whole range of NURBS tools. So we have NURBS curves. We also have NURBS surfaces. So there's lots of different organic and polygonal types of objects. And one of the reasons I like using FormZ so much is because of the parametric design behind a lot of their objects. A lot of things are smart. So we're really kind of talking about BIM light. And so what I'm going to do here is just kind of quickly, you'll see one of my favorite things. It sounds really simple and stupid almost, but it's like there's actually a wall tool in this program. And so when I start drawing, right now you can see that I've chosen to draw with 3D walls, and my justification, center, left, right, it doesn't really matter which one I choose right now because I can always change it later. And then I can set the thickness of that wall. So if I just simply start drawing walls over here, you can see that that wall is a two-dimensional wall because I've told it that I want it to have no height. All right, so that wall, if I go back into the parameters, I can change the justification, left, right, center, and I can also change the width. So if I wanted it to be 2 feet thick, I could do that as well. And so I don't think of it as a wall tool at all. I actually think of it as a lot of different things. I think of it as a countertop. I think of it as a base cabinet tool. It's a wall tool. It makes columns. It makes window frames. It makes all kinds of things that naturally just have thickness to them. All right, so what I'm going to do here is go back and I'm going to set a height when I start drawing here. And I'm just going to kind of go around the building and draw some walls that connect. And so I'm going to zoom in here. And then I'm going to tap the E key to end and then pull this up to whatever height I want it to be. So I'm going to go up 12 feet. I'm just going to type that in and hit enter. And you can see it doesn't line up with the underlay. And like I said, it didn't really matter because this is parametric. And you can kind of see now how this wall is outlined in orange. And anytime something is outlined in orange, that means I can modify it before I actually embed it into the project. So I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to just change the justification to the right. And it popped right over onto my walls that I had as my underlay. All right. So I'm going to turn off shadows there to make it a little easier to read. So you can also see now that I have this green grid underlying my whole scene, and that's a reference plane. That's kind of the invisible infinite plane that my geometry will snap to when I'm drawing on it. So for instance, if I just come over here and draw at weird angles and I spin that, you'll see that it's locked down to that plane. But as soon as I have 3D geometry, that plane actually can be placed on any surface. So if I wanted to draw something coming off of there like a roof, it's very easy to see where that's going to happen. And then you can also set up snaps. So if I wanted to snap every 3 feet, I can have my grid on there and I can actually snap. And now you can see that jumping every 3 feet. All right, so that's a really powerful feature, is that reference plane that kind of moves around. And of course, you can lock it down so that now if I were to go and draw and hover over that, I don't get that plane kind of jumping around. I do have a video on my site that kind of shows up how I set up FormZ for initial use. So that's a good video to watch just to kind of get you set up for my kind of defaults that I do when I'm working in FormZ. So what I'm going to do is just kind of quickly go through here and draw a few more walls. and get this finished up. So double click, set the height. Again, I'm just going to change the orientation. I never remember which one is right or left or anything like that because I don't really have to. So the other thing I could do instead of drawing walls, and I'll do this next here, is I could just draw rectangles. So I just type in the height, 12 feet. And you'll notice, again, even though it's outlined in orange, I have these little arrows, so I can change the height after I've drawn it. I can also move a point around and change the shape of that space after you draw it. So if you miss a point, it's no big deal. You can just simply grab it and drag it to where you want it. And the geometry stays perfect the whole time. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a rectangle. Let's see, let's do it over here. And again, I'm not going to worry about too much about which points I'm snapping to, because you'll see when I draw a shape like this, because it's parametric, it'll always remember the wall thickness, but I can actually, let me turn off my grid snap, I can actually manipulate the shape of that, and it just stretches. It's very stretchy geometry. So I can snap to this point just by inferring another point, and I can do the same there. So again, it didn't really matter if I snap to the right points at the beginning because it's so fast to adjust. Now the other cool thing is you have a little handle here, and you can adjust the thickness parameter as well on the fly. So if 6 inches isn't the right thickness, you can adjust that. All right, so there's a rectangle, and so what I might do with this rectangle to reshape it real quick here is let me pull out my reshape palette. So now I can just blow a wall out, and this brings up an important thing that another reason I really like working inside FormZ is that it uses live Booleans. All right, so I can push a face, and it just pushes that out, and now it's gone. Or I can offset a segment. In this case, I'm going to offset this segment back and snap to my wall that's under there. And now I'm just going to push that piece out. All right, so that is an easy way to manipulate geometry. And now I can go to reshape. And I set up keyboard shortcuts for all this stuff, so I work a lot faster when I'm actually on production. But you can see how if I tap the P key, it goes right to this reshape tool. So P is reshape. And I have M for move and R for rotate, and you can set them up however you want just by right-clicking and saying set shortcut, and then I can say P for that, and okay, now from now on P is going to be my shortcut for reshape because that's what it is in SketchUp. So when I'm going back and forth between programs, because I still use multiple programs and lots of people in my office use different programs, I still want to be able to work in those. So I like to set them up kind of similarly for that reason. All right, I'm going to finish up drawing a few more walls here. And I'm going to switch that and pull these up. And all of these are individual walls at the moment. But I'm going to show you kind of again about those Booleans. So let's see, I just have this one left. And you can see kind of how fast you can build a set of walls here. All right, so another thing is project organization. A lot of times when I start building a model, I'm not really thinking about organization because I just want to get my idea out, and I can go back and organize it later. But a lot of times, you know, I know there's a lot of methodical people out there who build their models very intentionally, and they are going to want to organize. So we have a layers palette, and this is how I work. There's also an objects palette, and you can choose to work that way as well. But in these larger architectural projects, I like to work with layers. So I'm going to go ahead and make a layer called walls. And let's just go ahead and make a few layers right now. Let's make one called glass. And let's make one called furniture. These layers can be whatever you want. You can always manipulate them later as well. So if I just select all of these walls, and because they're all the same material, I can right-click and say same material. And then I can go to the attributes and put those on the walls layer. So now, why is that a good thing? Well, because maybe I want to hide those walls so that I can see the cabinetry as I build it. All right. So project organization is very simple. The objects palette works the same way, but obviously we're going to have a lot more objects than we are going to have layers. So I tend not to work that way. All right, so let's see here. What's next? Let's go ahead and place some columns inside this space. So I'm going to do just the generate tools here. I'm going to just use a cube to do this. And what I'm going to do, you can see I kind of have a set of dimensions over here in my tool options, 6 inches by 6 inches by 12 feet tall. That's perfect. So I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to make a layer called columns. So this time I'll be intentional, and I'll draw on the column layer. And then all I'm going to do is just click on my center point here, and there's a column. And I could just then copy that column around if I wanted to, but I'll just draw these all real quick. And so my object snaps, you can see all these little dots showing up as I draw here. That's based on these options down here. So we can turn these on and off, and I'll pull this out in the middle so you can see it. I can say no snapping, right? And I can say points. So this one here is a really cool one. If I right-click and go into my snap options, I can change this to say go to thirds or go to fifths. So now when I hover over, if I hit enter here, when I hover over this little segment, you can see it divided it into 3. So it makes it easy for placing things when you maybe don't know the dimensions you want to move them, but you know how many divisions you want along a segment. So by default, that's set to 2, and what that does is it gives us a midpoint snap. So I'll just do that, and one more right here. All right, so there's my columns, and those all went on the column layer because that's where the red dot is in my layer palette there. All right, and now let's draw some glass in. All right, so I'm going to jump over here to these 2 offices, and I'm going to go into my materials palette, and I already have a glass material in here somewhere. There it is. And this time I'm not going to do a 3D wall. I'm just going to make my glass a single surface because one of the things about that is it's just real easy to control if I do it as a single surface. So I'm going to change my type of geometry that I'm going to draw to not be the wall. You could, if you want your glass to have thickness, sometimes you do, you could just have a 1-inch thick wall made out of glass. So I'm just going to do it as a surface here. So again, just click into my points, double click, go up to 12 feet. And there's a piece of glass, and you can see the transparency in the OpenGL mode here. I use kind of a mix of FormZ materials and Maxwell materials, but real quick, let me talk about materials. I have my materials palette open here. And if I just simply make a new material, you can see I have shaded, I have render zone materials, and I have Maxwell materials because I have the Maxwell render plugin installed. If you buy FormZ with render zone, you get the render zone libraries and the render zone renderer as well. If you don't buy one of those, you just get the shaded. You still get lots of different material libraries that are pre-installed inside the program. So we've got bricks, we've got glass, we've got water, we've got landscaping, we've got siding, we have roofing, all these different materials. And all you have to do is kind of double-click one, it loads it in, and now I could just simply paint an object with that material. It's very simple. All right, so like I said, I use some Maxwell materials, but the material libraries that come with it really give you a jump start into a lot of different architectural type materials. There's other ones in here too for furniture, but you'll notice a lot of these categories are architectural, so I really appreciate that, being able to kind of jump start my design and visualize it with materials right from the beginning. All right, so there's some glass. Let's do this up above glass as well. I'm going to do like a clear story up here. So this time I'm going to do the same tool, but instead of extruding it up, and you'll notice here I'm snapping right to the center of a face, which is kind of a cool snap option. It's one of the options right down here is snap to the center of the face. And this time I'm going to pull it down. You'll notice I'm drawing with the wrong material, but no big deal. So I'm going to go down a couple of feet, 2 feet. And you'll notice it went up even though I dragged it down. So FormZ does make a difference between positive and negative coordinates. And so it doesn't matter though, because I can always just go back over here, and because it's parametric, I can type in -2 feet in my tool options and push it down, or I can visually drag this arrow to wherever I want it to be. All right, so I could turn on grid snap and drag that. And so now I'm going to go back and change the material to glass. And you know what? I'm actually going to also put it on the glass layer. So it's in the right place. And I should do that with this one too. That should be on the glass layer. So all of those things, you can change them. You can set them up ahead of time, or you can change them after the fact. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and save, just because you never know what could happen. All right, so let's see. Now I'm going to go through and start making some movable glass partition walls. And so this will bring up a couple of other new tools. So everywhere that there's an opening here, I want to go ahead and draw in a glass partition wall. So let's see. I'm going to go to make a new layer. Let's call this glass partitions. Draw on this layer. Again, I'm going to use the 3D wall tool, but I'm not going to do it to draw walls. I'm going to do it to draw a frame around a window. I'm going to set my material to aluminum, and I'm going to move my reference plane to the vertical, because if I start drawing now, I'm drawing this thing on the ground, which I don't want to do. So I'm going to set my reference plane to be on this wall, so it's just that it's in that orientation. And then I'm going to just click here and drag down to there. And then I'm going to set a depth of 2 inches. So I'm going to type in -2. And there's the frame around my window. All right. I don't really want it to be 12 feet tall. That would be an extremely heavy door to move. So let's go ahead and change the parameters here again to set the, let's see what happens here. I'm going to click on this. You can see which dimension that's changing. That's considered the width. So I'm going to set the width to be 10 feet. And you'll notice it sucked it in from both sides, because the center point is where all the parametric dimensions come from. So now I'm just going to simply move that object down to the ground. And I'm actually going to move it so that it sits in the center of the column. So it's right over my plan view. Now, how that door actually slides, I don't know, because it doesn't matter at this point. I would figure that out later. And now let's go ahead and draw some glass in there. So I'm just going to, again, I'm drawing in this orientation because of my reference plane has been moved. I'm going to simply snap to the center. I'm going to change my object type to a surface. And I'm just going to snap down here, and there I have a piece of glass. All right, so there's my glass door. And what I'm actually going to do also, I'm going to put a mullion right down the middle. So again, using my 3D wall tool, I'm going to go ahead and set this now to just be 2 inches thick from the center. And I'm just going to click in the middle of that and double click in the middle of that. And you can see it starts to create a wall going the other direction. And let's go ahead and paint that thing aluminum so that it makes sense. And so now I have a door with a center mullion going down. And I could have used the column tool for that, but I kind of like using this. You can see I can just snap and make a truss if I wanted to very quickly in there. So that 3D wall tool can be used for a bunch of different stuff, and it really comes in handy. And you can always go back into the parameters of that and change it so it's 6 inches thick. Maybe it's offset off the left instead of the center. There's lots of different options with these after the fact parameters. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these, I'm going to use Shift and select all 3 objects. I'm going to right click, and I could group them if I just wanted to simply make a group. But in an instance like this, where it's a repeatable object throughout my scene, I'm going to move this and copy it all over the place. I'm actually going to go over here to my components. Let me reselect that. Into my components palette, and I'm going to create a component off of this. All right, so I'm going to snap to this point. Actually, let me change my reference plane. Snap to this point, and I'm going to call this my glass door. All right, so now I have a glass door component because I use that Create Component tool. And now I can copy this around, or I can open up my component manager, and you can see here in my components that I have a glass door in there now. All right, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and place a component And you can see now I have this as a component in my scene. You can see no matter which direction I turn, it's kind of automatically assuming it should face my camera direction, which is set up for placing people in trees and stuff. So I probably want to turn off Align with View and set it to Fixed. And you can see now I can just go ahead and place these components in my scene. And I can go ahead and change the orientation of that to 90. And go ahead and place some more. And kind of quickly populate the scene. Another way to do it is just take one that you have and move with the copy modifier turned on. And I can even say copy multiples. So I can say start here, and I can continue to make copies and copies and copies and copies and copies. All right, so that's another way to do it as well. So I can continue to place components. And let's rotate around throughout my scene here. And then one last one. Let's go back to 90. And come over here. And there's my last sliding door in place. All right, so the idea here is that all these classrooms have these big giant sliding doors that open up into a central space, and they can share space and share ideas and all kinds of neat stuff that can happen in schools nowadays, and even back in the 70s. All right, so what we've got now, let's see. Let's go ahead and draw a bunch of cabinets. And again, I'm just going to use the wall tool for that. Actually, no, let's do doors first. So one of the architect-friendly tools in here is I can place windows and doors, and that's under my components because it actually comes with a whole window, door, component section here. So I'm just going to place some very simple doors. And the nice thing about placing doors from the component library, again, I'm just going to kind of zoom in here to where I placed my doors earlier. And let's turn off this lock. There we go. Is that they automatically cut holes in the walls. Okay, so you can see there that doorknob, it's automatically placing that stuff. And you can see if I kind of, sometimes depending on the view that I'm in, you can kind of see this extra bounding box that shoots back off the door. That's like a void object. That's what it's going to use to cut the hole. All right, so that's kind of a time saver as well. And so I'm just going to place a bunch of doors. So that, again, it's kind of BIM-ish, BIM light, right? I'm placing doors. These ones are all going to have windows and stuff attached to them. So I won't do those. There's another one. And I'm under my model because I can see where to snap to that way. And let's get a door into the storage room. There we go. And you know, if you don't place them exactly perfect, no big deal. You'll see one of the options in the components palette is to reposition those. So I could just slide it down the wall if I wanted to. All right. So that, again, it's automatically cutting the holes in there. That's really a super time-saving thing. All right. You'll also notice that my layers, let me close this up. I get a bunch of extra layers when I do that. So whatever layers are in the component, I get in my scene. So I can turn off frames and trims and all that kind of stuff if I wanted to. So that happens when you import components. Now, one of the reasons I should get back to this window wall real quick here is if I wanted to modify one of these window walls, the reason I made it a component in the first place is now I can edit that component, right? And you're probably all familiar with this. If I go into this and I draw that funky diagonal again, and then I right-click and say, let me be done here, right-click, component complete, it's going to update all of my components, right? That's the reason we use components in the first place, is just so that that edit kind of propagates throughout the entire scene. So again, if I edit that component, select that, and delete it, maybe I want to make the door thicker instead of 2 inches, I could do that. So edit, and now all those diagonals are gone. That's the whole reason to use components throughout a scene. So sometimes you might want to use groups, but sometimes components. All right, so let's build some built-in cabinetry here. And so this is a kind of a science classroom. And so I have these countertops that run along the walls. And then in the storage room, I have them back there as well. So let's kind of just jam these into place. My cabinets I'm going to go ahead and put these on the furniture layer. I'm going to use a wood base. And again, I'm going to use the wall tool. And the wall width, I'm going to go 2 feet thick this time off of one of these directions. All right, so I'm going to lock my plane down to the ground and just start drawing. My height, I'm going to set it at 3 feet, so just type it in. Okay, so yeah, I'm using the wall tool, but the wall tool is extremely handy for all kinds of stuff. And because I'm just doing conceptual design, I'm not actually building cabinets, right? I'm building something that looks like cabinets for now, and I'll go back and refine that later as I go through design. Okay, you can see I missed that corner a little bit there. No big deal. Let's go up 3 feet. So you can see I can go underneath, grab that point, and just move it over. Okay? All right, couple more here. This time, let's go off the center. One thing is when I'm drawing, I get these little temporary guides. You can see that they show up whenever I start drawing. So they're not there, but if I click and start drawing, there they are. So if I hold down the Shift key, it locks it. So no matter where I move my mouse, it's going to lock that down so I can click on some other point. And then I can hit E on the keyboard to end drawing that. So I can continue to draw those, or I can go to Move, Multi-Copy, and let's say I want 3 more of these. And let's just drag them out. So you see that one divided the distance. I can also set it up to do even increment and draw 3. And you get a real nice visual feedback when you're drawing those cabinet bases. Now, here's another reason I like to draw with cabinet bases, or with the wall tool, I should say. Let me draw this one as well. Let's go up 3 feet and switch that to one of these other offsets. There we go. One of the reasons I like to draw with the wall tool is because now I'm going to take all of these. I'm just going to say select all on the same layer because they're all on my furniture layer. That's an easy way to select stuff. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move a copy. I'm going to go to wireframe, just my wireframe viewpoint, and I'm going to copy a setup to there, and I'm going to copy some up, let's say another, I don't know, 3 feet. Okay, so why did I do that? You're asking. So check this out. Now I can select all of these that I did. And here's another one over here. I'm just going to change the attributes of this. All right, so let's see. I'm going to make it 2 foot 3 inches wide. I am going to set the height to be, I don't know, 2 inches tall. All right, and you see what happened there was I just made countertops. And now I'm just going to change the color of them. And I've got countertops. Very simple. Just by changing parameters. All right, I'm going to get rid of all this and this and this and this. And you'll notice the other copy up here became upper cabinets. Right, so if I want to go ahead and select those now, I'm going to go ahead and change the wall thickness to 1 foot. And now they're upper cabinets. So a nice fast way to make cabinetry for quick visualization is to do something like that. I forgot to do this one over here, so let's get this one in real quick. Let's go up 3 feet. Drew it with the wrong material, no big deal. Let's move a copy of that up. Change the parameters to be 2 inches and 2 foot 3. All right, so a quick way to make cabinets. I don't need to make them all. Let's go ahead and place some of these center islands. I have these as a component already created, so I'm just going to reuse component that I've already created. So I'm going to use place component tool. And let's see, change my alignment back to 0. And just snap a few of these into the room. I missed that one. Okay. So now I've got a bunch of science tables in there. Let's go ahead and populate, you know, some marker boards and stuff like that. So If I go ahead and change this again to 90, let's see, this is actually my long marker board, so this one's going to go over here. This should be 180 for this one. Snap that there. Over here to 90, and you can see I can kind of quickly place these minus 90 into the scene. 90. And you can always rotate these after the fact if you want. I'm just trying to make it as fast as I can here. All right, so there's those, and then let's say maybe we're just going to add a floor real quick. All right, so I know we're running out of time here. I'm going to try to wrap this up. Floor, if I could spell right, oh well. And let's see, I think my floor is maybe that material. And I'm just going to quickly draw a floor and just snapping to the outside edges of everything. And I'm going to finish up with this piece because I'm not going to get to all the other cool stuff, but that's okay. So I didn't get all my glass walls in and stuff. Hold down my shift key. There we go. Again, if I messed up, no big deal. I can always go back and do it again later. And you see, this is why I love the 3D connection, because I can spin this thing around. And let's just make this 1/4 of an inch thick. I can spin that model around while I'm drawing, and it's super, super easy. All right, so there's my floor. Let's change the color of that floor. It's way too dark. All right. Okay, so now that I've got kind of just the bones of this model, real quick, I just want to show you a couple more things. So there's different shading modes, so you can see what it looks like with shadows turned on. You can see what it looks like as a hidden line model, which this is great for architectural drawings. You'll see that all my walls are still independent pieces, so if I need to still kind of tweak them a little bit, I could. I'm not going to, but what I am going to do is I'm going to use the Boolean union tool, and the reason why is, let me zoom in here. I might not do this until the end, but you'll see that the way those two walls, they're not healed together, so if I wanted to kind of make this my life easier for my drawings, I can use the Boolean tool and Boolean these together just by clicking on them. And you'll see my model slowly being glued together here. Okay, so now my walls are glued together. And again, if I go to hidden line, and it's a beautiful drawing, very fast, all of my wall intersections are cleaned up. Now, one of the other things you can do in the display options is you can do kind of these freehand looking, and I have a couple set up that I like to use. So if I wanted it to look more analog, more hand-drawn, I have one kind of set up with extensions and wavy lines. I also have one for a little bit of caffeine lines, we call them in the business. So like I had a little too much coffee this morning, so when I was drawing it. And this is a really great way to kind of soften the look of the presentation before showing it to a client. So I again, appreciate things like this being built into the program that make it so fast for me to come up with a drawing that is approachable and easy for someone to understand. And at the same time, the underlying model is super precise, accurate wall thicknesses, heights, doors, windows, marker boards, you know, everything like that. How are we doing on time, Kevin? We okay? You there?
Oh yeah, we're doing pretty good. I do have some questions coming in, but let me know. Do we have we're pretty good, so.
Yeah, go ahead. I think this is a good stopping point for now.
Cool. All right, so I have one question here. I assigned a few to you.
Okay.
This was from Aaron. Aaron did not understand how to make a glass wall halfway when you were doing. Is there any when you were making it? Is there any way that we could probably re-show that or do that again?
Yeah, which part? Sorry, I don't understand. Which part? Is that this question here? Halfway onto the wall. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, like, let me just go off to the side here, and I'll just set up a vertical plane, and I'm just going to draw a frame over here. All right, so let's go to aluminum. I'll make a 6-inch wall width. And if I just draw a frame, just floating in space, and I'm just going to go ahead and make it, let's say, 4 inches thick. So I'll type in 4 and hit enter. Okay, so here's the frame around my window, as it were. All right, so I'm going to click on my glass material now, and I'm going to, again, just use the rectangle tool, but this time I'm going to make a surface instead of a frame, and I'm just going to simply manipulate my view to go in there and snap to that midpoint. And because it's automatically locking it to the reference plane, now I can just simply snap to any point out here, and there it is. It's right in the middle. Now, what I used to do, back before I knew how to do any of that, is I would draw it out here, right? And then I'll just simply take it and I'll move it halfway into the wall. That's another way to do it, all right? I moved a copy of it. Move the self, move it in there. Now you can see that line is halfway in the middle. So now that I figured out another way to do it, I just simply go in there, snap to that midpoint, and just drag it out. And now that piece of glass is in there. And you'll see, because it's parametric, I can change the size of that glass very easily. And I can also go back to that frame, and I can either change the parameters numerically, or I can show controls, okay, and I can actually modify the frame as well, because it's parametric. So I hope that answers your question.
All right, moving on. Let's take a few minutes to answer some of these questions. Don wants to know, I draw and render exterior scenes. Can you briefly compare the Atlantis render and the Maxwell render for FormZ?
Well, both of those are standalone rendering programs, and I use both of them for different reasons. I like to use Atlantis for its animation. It's a very fast renderer, but I like to use Maxwell Render because it's physically accurate. So for stills, I tend to use Maxwell more, and you'll see I even have it kind of plugged in here. I could turn on Maxwell Fire, and you can see I can render the scene exactly how I have it right now with my Maxwell materials and everything, just kind of get a real quick idea of what's going on before I actually send it out to Maxwell Render proper. Whereas Atlantis, I would actually have to export this entire scene, File, Export, Atlantis, and then import that into Atlantis and start applying materials and stuff. So I have a pretty good idea already of what the model's going to look like, so I probably wouldn't even need to do that for Atlantis, but I use the two for different reasons. One of the nice things about Atlantis is you can use it with the Maxwell Render engine, so you can get the physically accurate material and lighting and stuff in Atlantis with Maxwell as well. It does cost a bit extra, but it doesn't support things like scatter and grass if you do it that way. So again, you know, there's no perfect answer for this. Unfortunately, I use multiple tools to get the job done, and that's just kind of how I work. I know not everybody wants to hear that because they're expensive, but if you're a professional working in the field, you almost have to have a bunch of tools in your toolbox to get the job done fast. Otherwise, you're going to spin your wheels a little bit trying to get everything to work with a single tool.
Very cool. Boris wants to know, great webinar. He has two questions. Question one, what are the shortcuts you're using for moving eye point around, like, you know, for example, pan, zoom, orbit? And then the second question is, what is your tool of choice for fast, realistic animation renderings?
Okay. So I'm using a 3D Connection, a Space Explorer mouse, and that just allows me to kind of spin this model around. You notice my mouse isn't moving one bit. So it makes it so my left hand can be doing something while my right hand is using the mouse and modeling. But, you know, FormZ has all the traditional orbit, eye, pan tools. And what I like to do is I like to set it up to work like SketchUp because by default, FormZ's navigation tools are not the same. So for instance, like right now, if I hold down my middle mouse button, I get orbit, just like SketchUp. If I add the shift key to that, I get pan. And you can do that by going into Edit, Key Shortcuts. You can say Load Defaults. And if I believe it's preset 2. So orbit is middle mouse button, pan is shift plus middle mouse button. that is the SketchUp preset. Preset 1 is the Rhino preset. Or you can go with default, which is how FormZ comes by default. So again, that's in load defaults, and this is for the view navigation defaults. All right. But again, I can't live without my Space Explorer now. I have to admit, it's just such a great productivity enhancer. So again, those guys make a really cool tool. You should definitely check it out. Not only is it great for when you're building the model, but if I actually wanted to take a client into the model, you know, and walk through the door and look around inside the space, I can do that all with the Space Explorer, and it's not jerky movements at all. You know, you tend to use these other tools, and they're a little bit jerky movements, and they're not too natural. I like to just go in with the Space Explorer, and we can walk through the space, and I'll just have the computer set up with a projector in their room, and we'll just look around like that. So another great reason is for presenting with it. It's a very easy way for, you know, people don't get motion sickness as much because I can move really slow, controlled movements as I kind of fly into the space and go through it. And they tend to appreciate that too. As far as the rendering goes, I kind of answered by the last question. You know, if I'm going to do animation, I'm going to render with Artlantis. If I'm going to do stills, I'm probably going to render with Maxwell Render. Either way, they both make beautiful renderings. They're great for, you know, I don't know if clients can tell the difference between them. If you need ultra realistic, you want to use Maxwell. If you can get away with a little less realistic but way faster renderings, you want to use Artlantis for that. And as far as I've heard, they're developing a V-Ray plugin for rendering in FormZ as well. It's just I have no idea when it's coming out, and I don't know how much it'll cost or anything.
Cool. All right. Let's do a couple more questions. I'm looking at some are very long, so I'm going to stick to the small ones, but we'll see what we can do. I'll try to format and forward these questions to Evan, and maybe we can have do a blog post to answer all of them. So let's see. David has one question. How do you use this to show the client multiple design options in the same model?
Okay. So there's a palette called Scenes, which I didn't get to, but I would have liked to. And the Scenes palette is kind of like SketchUp Scenes, where I can control visibility of objects with layers, but I can't control, you know, so let me back up. There's actually a palette called Views. So let's say I really like this view. I can add it in. And let's say I like this view, and I can add this view in. And so now I can switch back and forth between these two views. And you can see it animates in between them just like a lot of programs do now, which is great, right, because it's not a jarring effect. I can kind of get my bearings as I go around. But views do not take layer visibility into account. So what I could do is I could have another design option where say there's another room off over here, right, and it's made out of glass apparently. All right, and this right here is going to be on its own layer, so let's call this a glass box. And I'm going to put it on the glass box layer. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let me close this stuff down, put it away, kind of clean up. All right. So in this scene, I'm going to make a new scene. And this is going to be design option 1. And let's go ahead and turn this red dot off. This is a little bit confusing. I've actually just made a video for Method that describes how this works, so you'll have to come back to my site and watch that one because it's a little bit involved. I'm going to turn this red dot off. I'm going to go ahead and make another scene and call this design option 2. And in this scene, I'm going to turn the glass box off. And now I'm going to turn off this red dot. Okay? So now let's move this and close up layers so you can see everything. Shrink this up a bit. Okay, so let's go to design option 1. Glass box is on. Let's go to design option 2. Glass box 2, or the glass box is gone. So scenes take layer visibility into account, so I can present stuff like that. The other way to do it is just have things on layers and turn them on and off as you're presenting. That works as well. You can also make layer groups. By clicking this, I can say new group. So I could have a group called option 1, and I could have another group named option 2, And I can then drag layers. So let's say my glass box is in option 2. I can drag layers into these different options. So maybe all these are not an option, but I have different things in, and I can just turn groups on and off as well. So as in any program, there's multiple ways to accomplish the same thing. I think scenes is the answer for that question, though.
All right, Evan, what about one last one?
Did I answer that whole one?
I hope so. Let us know.
Let's do it.
David, let us know in the question window if we answered that completely. But okay, one last one. Chuck wants to know, what is the extension at the bottom of the modeling tools?
The extension at the, oh, okay, this little guy. This is because I have Maxwell Render Suite, the plugin installed. So extensions in this case is Maxwell specific stuff. So I can use Maxwell C, volumetric objects. I can play some MXS files are Maxwell scene objects. So for instance, if you go to my site and you look at some of my posts regarding Maxwell scatter, you'll see that there's millions of objects in the scene, and some of those were hand-placed using place MXS, and some of those were placed using the Maxwell extension, the object modifiers, and using Maxwell scatter to randomly, and this randomly places and rotates objects throughout your scene. So I think I had, 3,000 trees and 30,000 rocks in the scene, and I had grass, and all of that was rendered in Maxwell Render, but the scene was set up right here in FormZ. So these are specific tools. You can also download extensions from the FormZ website that provide specific additional tools that people have written scripts for, and those would show up in there as well.
All right, in that case,
I guess I should probably point out as a last.
Yes, please.
Let me just, one more thing is the one of the other reasons I really like working inside of FormZ is because their support forum on the website is an amazing place to get questions answered. I mean, I have my website where I try to answer people's questions, but if you want kind of immediate answers, the support team at Autodesk is on top of that forum, and they're extremely helpful, and I see time and time again people asking questions and getting answers right away to their questions over there. So the forum is a great place to meet other people who use FormZ. I try to get on there as much as I can, but the support team itself is really, they listen. So if you have requests, they really do take notes, and they try to provide the best tool, and that's another great reason for using this tool, is that the company really stands behind the product.
Sounds good. Yeah, so to check out that FormZ website, it's pretty simple. Just go to formz.com. I know that some of you guys have some questions that's probably the best way to get the answers as well, but I will work with Evan and maybe the FormZ team, and then we'll see if we can get these questions answered as much as we can. We had some long ones, so I apologize to those out there. Yeah, we're going to try to get to them as best as we can, okay? But Evan, I think I'll switch back to me, and we'll probably just wrap things up.
All right, thanks, Kevin.
Cool. Here we go. Taking control now. I was trying to come up with a reason why we should have a glass window room, though, but I can't come up. Maybe later.
There's lots of reasons.
But yeah, on behalf of the Novedge team, on behalf of Evan, I want to thank all of you guys for attending this really cool FormZ webinar. I hope it gives you guys sort of a conceptual understanding of what you guys can do, especially for conceptual architectural modeling. So yeah, definitely check it out. We'll try to get a blog post up. We'll keep you all posted. There will be links in the webinar follow-ups for those and for those who did not attend too as well. But if you guys are looking up, to pick up a copy of FormZ, if you guys are interested in multiple licenses, FormZ is available in the U.S. from Novedge.com. We are one of the largest online design software stores, and we offer a whole entire selection, a whole entire catalog from Autodesk, from all sorts of things. But yeah, FormZ is available from us. Definitely contact our sales specialist, Bob at Novedge.com. And I do want to mention, if you guys want to sharpen your skills, go to getmethod.com. Evan, do you have anything, last words about Get Method before I switch to the next slide?
No, just come visit. Come say hi, comment, and check out the tutorials. There's a ton of video tutorials on the site. There's a few written ones as well. And if you have, you can always email me on the site. Just contact me there if you have specific questions, and hopefully I can get back to you and answer those.
Cool. Yeah, sign up for the newsletter as well, guys. In that case,
definitely.
Barbara?
Yes, I'm here again to remind you about our blog and our Facebook page. Did you know that we interviewed our webinar presenter, Evan Troxel, for the Novedge blog? Come visit us and learn all about the man behind this awesome presentation and one of the voices of Archispeak podcast. You'll find all the info and all the links to his website and his endeavors on our blog post. Just type the name Evan Troxel in the blog's search box. And next week, if you are using the latest release of AutoCAD, don't miss a chance to join Autodesk technical evangelist and Catalyst columnist Lynn Allen as she takes you through a tour of the newest productivity features in AutoCAD. Knowing Lynn, she's sure to throw in some tips and tricks you can use regardless of the AutoCAD release you're using. Lynn will be very busy in the next few days, I heard, and I wonder why. But we booked her solid for our Novedge webinar, so don't miss it. The upcoming webinar, as always, is free and will last about an hour, including the Q&A session. Sign up right away, and to do that, head over on www.novedge.com/webinar/110. Last but not least, today's webinar is being recorded live, and if you want to rewatch it, you can always find it on our Novedge webinar series channel through Vimeo and YouTube. Thank you very much, Evan. That was great. I'm sure we are not your only fans from now on.
You're welcome.
I'd love to, have more webinars with you and more cooperation as always. Thank you so much.
I second that. Hey, Evan, is it okay if we mention your Twitter account?
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, just like us, we're at Novedge, but you can also follow Evan Troxel at EvanTroxel. But I'm sure you guys can
That's my whole name, but my Twitter is eTroxel.
Oh, eTroxel. Oh, okay. So I should ask Barbara for that. But yeah, definitely check it out. Head on to getmethod.com. And find what you need. All right. In that case, everybody have a good one. Enjoy your day. Ciao.
Thanks. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye, Barbara. Thanks for having me.